Hello everyone. Uh, Today we would be discussing about the fertilizer industry, and we are group 6. The agenda that we would be covering here are the use of fertilizers and their various types. What are the global demands for the fertilizers, fertilizer industry in India, and the leading manufacturers. We need to understand the global 4R nutrient framework, and finally the conclusion. So why use fertilizers? Fertilizers are any solid, liquid or gaseous substances containing one or more plant nutrients. They are applied to the soil directly on the plant or added to the aqueous solutions in order to maintain soil fertility, improve crop development, yield or crop quality. Types of fertilizers include inorganic, organic and biofertilizers. Inorganic fertilizers are chemically synthesized, whereas organic fertilizers are derived from living organisms. Biofertilizers consist of bacteria and other symbiotically associated with crops. As you can see, there are three types of fertilizers: nitrogen based, phosphor based, and potassium based. So we can see that gradually the consumption has been increasing since the end of the last decade, and the largest consumption is in the Southeast Asian region of the world, which consists of around 40% of the global consumption.
Hi, now we'll discuss about the global consumption of fertilizers. With the recent trends, we understood that the K2O consumption across the globe has increased from 1930s to 2010. The major reason behind is the K2O availability from muriate of potash is very cheap when it is compared to nitrogen and phosphorus. Generally, there are three kind of nutrients: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium used in the production of fertilizer. About fertilizer sector in India, India is the world's second largest consumer of fertilizer after China, and it's only the third largest producer. In 2014-15, the country produced about 3083.6 thousand tons of fertilizer, but still about 30 to 40% of fertilizers being imported from Middle East Asia and other countries. 57 large-sized fertilizer plants and 64 medium-sized fertilizer plants and small-sized chemical fertilizer production units are there in India, most of which are PSUs and very few are are in private sector. The fertilizer industry has the capacity to indigenously meet 50% of the country's phosphatic fertilizer due to the needs of the India's soil. The phosphorus is very highly required for the production of paddy and wheat. There are some of the leading fertilizer companies in India: National Fertilizer Limited, Fertilizer and Chemicals Travancore Limited, Rashtriya Chemicals and Fertilizer Limited, Madras Fertilizer Limited, Paradip Phosphates Limited, Hindustan Fertilizer Corporation Limited, most of which are PSUs and some of which are divested to the private firms. These are the major categories of inorganic fertilizers. Urea, which has 80 percentage of the 80 percentage of usage in India by Indian farmers. The the most of the major component of urea is nitrogen, as in Indian soil need nitrogen a lot for the agricultural products, as it is the major source of proteins for agricultural products. And other categories non-urea fertilizers, which has major component as phosphorus and potassium, and other components are micronutrients like gypsum, boron, chromium, magnesium and calcium. And as we already know that fertilizers are mainly used by the farmers, and about 50% of the Indian employment is done by farmers, so it is highly subsidized product. About 50 to 60% of the total MRP is subsidized by government, so it's high into subsidy. The from the record, about 3% of the total budget sanction, it goes on subsidies to fertilizers. Now, the major raw material into the production of phosphatic fertilizer is ammonia. Most of the fertilizer has in-house fertilizer ammonia plant or they import. But the big plants, they have ammonia plant. They manufacture there. So, looking at the global standards and the best practices, the energy that is used for production of ammonia is 36 gigajoule per ton of ammonia produced. But we can see in India the best practices are not followed, and it is high, like 43.3 gigajoule per ton per ton of ammonia. Now these are the some of the countries of which the energy used in production per ton of ammonia is given, and we can see that India is far higher than other countries. So the like in the production of ammonia, we can look at there are leakages, there are we can have purge gas in machinery which is used in different countries but not in India, which can improve the improve the efficiency and reduce the energy spent on production of per ton of ammonia. Now, next is Nivedita will talk about some of the global companies which produces fertilizer and their best practices.
So here we'll come across few companies and see what are their sustainable practices in fertilizer sector. First we have Israel Chemicals, which focuses on production and creation of products like fertilizer, metals and other chemical compounds. They have seek to build on the Millennium Development and realize the human rights with 17 sustainability development goals. Some of their goals are ending hunger, achieving food security, and improving nutrition and promoting sustainable agriculture, saving energy, combat climate change, and achieve gender equality, empowering all women and girls. The next is OCP Morocco. They have a lot of different types of chemicals and they focus mainly on phosphate fertilizers. In order to boost sustainable agriculture, OCP has adopted a comprehensive strategy which emphasizes on learning, engaging, and innovating. The next company is Yara International. They have different types of fertilizers at their disposal and focus on agriculture and better food production. Their sustainable agriculture practices are profitable production, in which they provide sufficient financial reward to farmers and enable them to have encouraged production and conservation of the environment. The next is protected environment, in which they minimize the use of non-renewable resources, replenish the tapped resources, and enhance the environment and natural resources. Prosperous communities is another practice in which they contribute to thriving and viable local communities. The next company is Mosaic, which helps agricultural lands around the world to achieve the best production in numbers and quality. Their sustainable initiatives are they have responsible use of water, in which they involve facility specific and segment wise initiatives to reduce their water footprint. The next initiative is land reclamation, in which they conduct effective inch by inch reclamation and return excavated lands to productive uses for both wildlife and people. The next is Potash Corp Company, is the largest fertilizer firm in the world in terms of production and revenues. Their primary focus towards sustainability are safety, in which they have stringent safety and health standards as followed by SHE manual. The next is environmental impact, in which they invest their energy and resources on technology, research, stewardship initiatives, and help in meeting federal and local regulatory requirements. The next initiative is supply chain management, in which they look for the most responsible and cost effective ways to produce goods and services.
So, the fertilizer industry has introduced the global 4R nutrient stewardship framework to help the industry meet the sustainability standards. The core of 4R nutrient framework is to ensure that the right source of plant nutrients are applied at the right rate, right time, and place to meet the sustainability objectives. The right the right product sources. Balanced fertilization includes nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium secondary and micronutrients. The nutrients are from urea, nitrate, and ammonium. They are applied at the right rate, which implies soil testing, yield goal analysis, crop removal balance, plant tissue analysis, and record keeping is done, and at the right time implies application timing, slow and controlled release of right fertilizers, urea, and nitrification fertilizers. The right place implies application method, incorporation of fertilizers, applicator, maintenance, and calibration. Hence, to conclude, we say that the fertilizer industry has seen tremendous growth in the previous decade. Various measures to improve productivity at fertilizer plants have been adopted and have been proved successful. Various sustainability practices adopted by the fertilizer manufacturers were discussed, and now we see an increasing trend of the usage of organic fertilizers, which are easily biodegradable and do not cause pollution. And the food produced using organic fertilizers is free from harmful chemicals. So the better future of the sustainable practices in fertilizer industry would be a shift towards organic fertilizers. And there is an increasing awareness among the consumers towards organically grown food, as it is deemed healthier and the practices more sustainable. Thank you.